right along commentaries about the plague of darkness. And again, we're studying today in memory of Reuben Silverman, that is Neshama Sheheaven Aliyah. We're going to turn to Rabbi Baruch Epstein, the author of the Torah Tamima. Torah Tamima is a commentary. He collects the midrashim on the portion, and then he offers his insight into them. So he writes on chapter 10, verse 21, the verse states, Vayamash choshech, that the darkness was palpable. So the Mechilta to Parshat Pesach says what Rashi said, that when an Egyptian was standing, he couldn't sit, and when he was sitting, he couldn't stand, because the darkness was thick. Now comes along the Torah Tamima. All right, listen to what he says. I hope you're sitting down for this. Sitting down. It's going to rock your world. Okay, hold on to your banister. So the Midrash says, Mevur b'Midrashim. It says the Midrash teaches us that the darkness was thick like a dinar. It was thick like a coin. It's thick like a coin. That's how thick the darkness was. He said, the point of this is very, 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 very wondrous. Why do these midrashim need to give us the measurements of the thickness? Okay, just say it was thick. Why do we care how thick? What's the point there? And also, now he asks the question that was just raised. We also need to think about this, because according to Rashi, that the entire time period, it was entirely dark for all 6 days. There was no daytime. If that's the case, the order of creation changed. I mean, to say that all of a sudden we had 6 days without there being light and darkness, without there being day and night. This is very difficult. God promised Noah and his children, day and night will not cease. There will always be a day and there will always be a night. God promised that to Noah and to his sons. So what is this going on? Now comes along the Torah Tamima and offers a shocking explanation. Shocking! It says, Lule de Mistafina. Lule de Mistafina means, if it were not for the fact that I were afraid. If it were not for the fact that I were afraid, I would say this. But I'm afraid, so I'm not going to say this. But if I wasn't afraid, this is what I would say. So I'm going to tell you, if I weren't afraid, I would say that this is what he's saying. But since I'm afraid, I'm not saying that this is what he's saying. So he's saying this is what I would say if I was not afraid. Okay? So now that we said that, we can say whatever we want. We weighed the Mistafina, were not for the fact that I were afraid to create a new interpretation. I would say, weighed the Mistafina lamtzi davar chadash ma'od. Hayiti omer, or that this concept of darkness, haya lo ba'avir, this concept of darkness was not in the space, in the air. The air was not dark. Rak be'einei ha'anashim. The concept of darkness was only in the eyes of the people. Meaning to say, there was no darkness in the air. It was a darkness in each person's eye. There was almost like a cataract over each person, each Egyptian's eye. Each Egyptian was blinded in their own eyes. So matuach tavur al ishuna ayin. And the rabbis were saying that this, like cataract, could be felt by the hand and was thick like a coin. And all of a sudden, all of our questions go away. Meaning to say, there was day and night. It was day and night. But for the Egyptians, it was dark. Why? They had a thickness over their eye, and they couldn't remove it. All of a sudden, now the Torah Tamima doesn't say this, but if we play out what he's saying each Egyptian had a personal darkness, that the world remained the same. Sometimes a person's having a really terrible day, or sometimes I hear from people who have just suffered a loss. They don't understand why the world is going on as normal, why the sun is shining, why everybody is out there, smiling and laughing. But for them, everything is dark. And this is what the Torah Tamima says. There was no darkness in the air. It was a personal darkness. Each person had their own darkness because they had a cataract over their eye. And that's why for the Israelites there was light, not because there was a miracle that there was half the day was half of Egypt was dark and the other half was light. Is because it was a personal darkness sent upon the Egyptians. And I understand this concept of a personal darkness to be actually, even though the Torah Tamima says it physically, I understand it to be spiritually, that the Egyptians were stuck in their place. They were stuck in their place. They were unable to connect with any light. There was this personal darkness. And sometimes it's often the case, tragically, that a physical illness causes us to have a personal darkness. And that's literally what the Egyptians were going through. This is why I'm such a big believer in the concept of the power of what's called nates. This is the power of praying at sunrise. What do we mean when we pray at sunrise? We're saying that we are going to seek out the sun. We are going to pray at the first possible moment of sunrise. We are not living in the world of darkness. We're not living in darkness. We're living in light, and we're seeking out the light, and therefore we're able to go beyond our personal light. So that's the approach of the Torah Tamima. Again, let me just summarize it. That he says each Egyptian had their own personal darkness, and that was the difference here. So, okay, let me just pause for a second. Let me stop the recording and